And um, there's a reason for that. In any case, so we're shooting yet another episode now.
It's
Well,
one.
after what date
I
is it?
was gonna say hello, everyone. Today is Wednesday, November 25th.
Yeah, and we just spent some time talking about empathy off our stream, and now we're gonna
Or
talk about
sympathy versus empathy.
sympathy versus empathy. And now we're going to talk about the election. Well, not so much the election. So the election happened. Joe Biden won. Donald Trump has spent the last 3 weeks testing the quality of our electoral system.
Yeah. So yesterday was the third week because the elections were on November 3rd, and the 24th yesterday was the third week after elections.
Yeah, and we've been monitoring this, or at least I've been monitoring this, and he has lost most of the cases that they filed. There's a few cases hanging on right now, but I don't think anything's going to come of it. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to get Joe Biden next year inaugurated, and off we go. But that did make me think that all these recounts, all these hand recounts that they did in Georgia, and all these hand recounts that they're now going to do in pretty much in Pennsylvania. I think they did several recounts, and that made me really wonder, like, why are we using technology that's at least 50 years out of date? Like, looking at the technology that we're using during this election, really made me wonder how. And there were some kind of interesting aspects to this technology. Like, for instance, they were using artificial intelligence models to verify signatures.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea being that they would.
So were they photographing or imaging the ballots and looking and then comparing the signatures to
Yeah.
some kind of database?
Yeah, so they have, so when you sign up to vote, you sign your application, and then they compare that signature to the signature on your ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Not on your ballot, I'm sorry, on your, like, the paperwork that you sent with your ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this is why, okay, let me sidetrack for like a really quick second. Some of the lawsuits that are remaining, um, simply it's incomprehensible to me how they even got filed. Well, it's not really incomprehensible because Rudy Giuliani is the head of the Donald Trump's legal team, and he couldn't even fucking find 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this hilarious shit happened in the last three weeks. Like, for instance, the time when Rudy Giuliani wanted to make a big press conference about their new strategy about how they're going to steal this election for Donald Trump, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion. But whatever. How are they going to defend the accuracy of this election, and how are they going to sue and everything? So
Mm-hmm.
they needed to hold a press conference, and they couldn't find a place to hold it. And then eventually they did. So they announced that they're going to hold their press conference at the Four Seasons, and then it turned out to be the Four Seasons landscaping business,
Mm-hmm.
which some asshole on their team like cold, and the landscaping business, which probably was pro-Trump, it seems like, the owner of it was. They're like, yeah, wow, it's amazing. Sure, come on. Like, I don't think the owner at any point thought like, oh,
They're thinking we're
they
at the
think,
Four Seasons Hotel.
yeah, they're thinking.
Oh,
Where I think the owner was actually quite surprised and probably very proud of the fact that they would consider that business. This is me exercising empathy, trying to understand the guy. So or girl for that matter, I guess. But uh, I don't hold any grudges against the owner. I think it was probably the best day of his life. So, more power to him. But it's just fucking hilarious how incompetent those people are. They're so incompetent that they literally threw Rudy Giuliani out of court. And he used to be a competent attorney, and I heard him in court. I heard him in court the other day, just like 2 or 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm. Like a
Um,
recent presentation.
a
He
yeah,
made
recent
in court.
in a recent case. I heard it 2 or 3 days ago, but I think it was his presentation on Friday or Thursday or something like that of last week.
Was it for the Pennsylvania
I
situation recount?
I don't remember if it was Pennsylvania or Georgia, but in one of
There
those.
was also some recounting happening in Michigan, I believe.
Yeah, it was either Pennsylvania or Georgia, though, right?
Okay.
And they were discussing, and the judge was like, "Well, I can't apply, or rather, which standard are we gonna standard of review are we gonna apply here? We're gonna apply the strict scrutiny standard of review, right? And strict scrutiny, I can't pronounce that word for some reason. Strict scrutiny is a term of art. It's a term of art that most lawyers should know.
What's a term of art?
Uh,
What
a
does
term
that mean?
a term of art is like how can I describe it? It's like a something that if you work in a particular industry, you would know what that means.
Okay.
While if you don't know, if you don't work in a particular industry, you wouldn't know what that
So
means,
it's
right?
like
So
business jargon, like
yeah,
specific
jargon.
industry.
It's
Yeah.
a jargon, yeah.
Okay.
So when somebody says strict scrutiny, they don't mean they're going to scrutinize what you brought to court strictly. What they
Okay.
mean is that there is a specific standard that requires, I'm not going to go through the legal standard, but it's a specific standard that you have to meet in order to win the court case or, have a chance to win the court case, right? In this case, negligence. So if you can prove negligence, then there is a strict scrutiny standard that can be used. And Rudy's answer was, "Oh no, we want to use normal scrutiny." There's no such thing as fucking normal scrutiny. That's not unlike strict scrutiny. Normal scrutiny is not a term of art.
What are the other options?
Well, you can have strict. I forgot, to be honest, but
Okay.
it's not normal scrutiny. And I wasn't. I would look. Let's put it this way: I am an attorney. I haven't practiced civil law in quite a while, and I forgot what the alternative to strict scrutiny is. I think there's strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and then there's what the fuck is it? Just negligence standards. Reasonably prudent person is the next. So
Okay.
strict scrutiny is basically whatever happened, it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Intermediate scrutiny, it's like, well, did you mean it to happen? And then the reasonably prudent person tests would be like, would a reasonable person in that position do the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So examples of that would be like somebody might apply strict scrutiny to you if you were improperly um, improperly storing dynamite, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you were improperly storing the dynamite. You knew you were improperly storing the dynamite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then out of the blue, a 5-year-old child walks into your factory and throws a match, and the whole factory blows up, killing the child and hundreds of other people. And then you were dragged to court, and in court the judge is like, "Well, we're gonna use strict scrutiny because you broke the law." Right? You were so negligent to the point of recklessness.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember my civil law correctly, and if I don't, make a comment down or on the platform and tell me I'm an idiot. But in any case, so listening to what's his name, Rudy Giuliani, was kind of pathetic because the dude is out of his realm and hasn't prepared at all. He's sweating so much that his fucking hair is leaking. Because he dyes his hair. Because everybody on Trump's team is like so vain that they can't allow age to define them in any shape or form. And in any case, so this is me shitting on Trump and his defense team, but they're losing primarily because they forget that there is the difference between the court of public opinion, which is like what you can say on television, and the actual court. In the court of public opinion on television, you can go and you can say things like, which they have said, in Arizona, there are 600,000 ballots, and our administration has seen no signatures on those ballots, right?
Right.
And
Wouldn't
No, but let me finish. So like when the normal person hears that, they hear like, oh, there's 600,000 ballots in Arizona with no signatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the reality, what that man was actually meant to say is, oh, there are 600,000 ballots in Arizona that we haven't actually looked at yet. We're allowed to look at them. They will allow us to look at them. We just haven't looked at them yet.
Yeah, but
so for that moment, before I look at them, I'm going to make sure to phrase it in such a way as if it's a big conspiracy.
yeah, however, yeah, you're 100% right. But I think there's also responsibility in the part of the news network who's reporting the story to go and do investigations and make sure that whatever this person is saying is correct,
And they have.
or to refute that person, and their job is to go and investigate. Giuliani is saying that there are 600,000 ballots in Arizona
Well,
or
he wasn't the
wherever,
one saying it, but yeah.
whatever, that have no signatures, but we sent an investigator to Arizona who did this and that and discovered that
They
these
do that.
ballots are,
No, they do that.
sometimes news networks fail to double check the
No, they
information that.
do. They actually did that. They actually did this year. They did it in many cases. The problem is that when that's facts and logic, and when you bring facts and logic into this conversation, then people just dismiss it. It's very simple. You just simply haven't interacted with it online yet, or
Yeah, okay, you're right.
it's one of those things where it's like arguing with anybody who doesn't want to hear the truth, who doesn't want to hear your argument. As soon as you finish making your argument, they just move on to the next argument. It's like 600. Oh, okay, fine. Maybe there were ballots in there, but how do we know about Pennsylvania? There, 10 million ballots were without signatures, and then you would be like, well, no, they weren't. Okay, fine. Pennsylvania, forget about that. Georgia, 10 trillion ballots, no signatures, all wrong signatures, all written in Chinese. I heard it on ONA. I heard it on One American News Network or whatever the fuck the name of that thing is. And you can't stop it because it's always something next. It's always next. And it's the same thing with Donald Trump lawsuits. It's always the next thing. Oh, we lost? Next one. Oh, we lost that one? Next one. Oh, we lost that one too? Next one. There was hilarious fucking thing that I heard that you hear all the time, like online, from certain people. Again, most Trump supporters are reasonable human beings who acknowledge the fact that this is what happened and moved on with their life by now. But there are certain humans who are saying things like, "Oh, Donald Trump is saving all the real evidence for the Supreme Court." These are the people who are so fucking stupid and so ill-educated by a terrible educational system, is that they believe that you can introduce evidence in the Supreme Court. They don't realize that Supreme Court does not accept evidence. They don't hear evidence. They don't accept evidence. They don't hear testimony. They don't bring in witnesses. They don't ask questions. All they do is review the record of courts before them. They can hear arguments. They can hear legal arguments, not, well, Your Honor, I heard that in Pennsylvania there were a bunch of people who were illegal who voted. You should look into it. Because that's actually, by the way, every single conservative argument just ends with, look into it. Because they never do their own research. At least the ones who argue. Again, I don't want to generalize 70 million people, but the kind of people who argue online, they never actually do any of their research. They're just like, oh, just look into it. Just look into it. Well, I'm like, okay, have you looked into it? Well, no, but you should look into it.
Yeah. I was listening to some kind of lecture about Greek, an introduction to Greek philosophy, and one of the lectures was about democracy and how democracy is very slow moving, and how the Greeks practically invented democracy, and that's what I was looking up when they stopped being democratic, because at some point they were conquered by somebody, and they became a dictatorship or some kind of empire, right?
Okay.
Which leads me to today's question: is how do we protect democracy in America, and why is democracy
Well, why do we have to have a specific question?
We don't.
Okay, so you ask one question at a time. I don't like these double sign, multiple questions in one.
Okay. Go ahead. Why do you think we should protect democracy in America? And how do we do it?
Why do you think we should protect the democracy in America?
Well, I actually come from a very dictatorship mindset, and I feel like human beings fall into two categories: the sort that are okay with dictatorships and people telling them what to do and think, and people who want to have big community discussions about how to do things best.
Okay. It seems like one of those is better than the other.
It really depends, because if the democracy
No, it really doesn't depend. The first one,
well, the whole Eastern block of Earth is mostly dictatorships
I
or
know.
ruled by
And they
dictators.
suck.
Oh,
They're
I
third
guess
world countries for a reason.
we have China, who's led by a dictator.
He's not
We
a
have
dictator. As Donald Trump has pointed out very accurately, actually, this is something that media made fun of him mercilessly for, and I think he was right actually in that regard. Xi Jinping, the leader of China, does have to take into account the interest of his people.
that's right. That is right.
He's
Most
not a full-on dictator.
most dictators have to take account their peasants or subjects because
No,
why not?
that's not true.
If they don't want, they have learned sufficiently from the past that if they mistreat the subjects, they will revolt because they have greater power.
They never revolted in the Soviet Union. They never revolted in China before.
What do you mean? We have the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 for the Russians.
Yeah, but
We have
they never revolted against the Communist Party.
they haven't thus revolted against the Communist Party, but the People's Republic of China has only been around since 1949.
Yeah,
So it's
50
only
years,
70 years.
70 years now.
70 years. That's not.
But they haven't been dictatorial. I would argue that they haven't been particularly dictatorial. Now you have to understand that China itself has kind of like a more dictatorial nature by themselves, but they haven't been particularly dictatorial for the last 30 years at least.
Okay, tell me what dictatorial is in your book. What does it mean? What's a dictatorial government?
Well, a dictatorial government is one that doesn't care about the welfare of their people. One that only cares about the welfare of those on top, and one, specifically the one person on top, and one that seeks to maintain control. How do you maintain control? We read above rules for rules, or the dictator's handbook. If you're building a dictatorship, what do? You build a large palace. You keep your people hungry and starving and poor and stupid, and you don't educate them, and you don't build any roads, specifically any roads leading to the palace.
Palace.
In fact, the only road that you build is the one from the palace to the airport, and then from the airport back to the same road. But you build a circular one just to show. You build two roads, one to egress, one to ingress, just to show how cool you are. But that's how you build an actual dictatorship. Which one of those features does China have? They have plenty of roads. They spend a tremendous amounts of money on education. They want to make their people wealthier and happier, and they feed them more food than they did before. They want to make their people stronger. They want to make their people more productive. They want to make their people more educated, and they want to build roads coming. That they have roads coming out of their ass, for God's sakes. They have best roads in the world right now.
Well, Fidel Castro did the same thing for Cuba during, his dictatorship.
Is it possible that not every communist is a dictator, and not every person at the top of the Communist Party is not actually a dictator? Or maybe just like really shitty dictators who haven't read the book about how to be a dictator?
It's possible.
Well, you say it's possible, but like, is that the case?
Yeah, it's possible. When I say dictator, I don't always mean a tyrant that punishes people heavily and makes them miserable.
Mm.
A dictator doesn't have to be a tyrant.
A dictator doesn't have to be a tyrant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. But at the same time,
And what you're describing about China is that they don't have a tyrant. Sure, they can't go on the internet and see, Xi Jinping being made fun of because as a Winnie the Pooh character.
well, they're doing it for a very important reason.
Why?
Because they're doing it because they think that they're gonna enter they're gonna enter a time of instability in the next few years. They know that. They've known that for the last 10 years, that they're gonna enter a time of instability
What instability?
in the world.
Okay.
They've predicted this. They knew that. Chinese economists knew that. We knew that. Everybody knew that. It's just nobody wanted to accept this.
Okay.
Right? But we're about to enter a period of instability. The powers that be are shifting. They're shifting away from United States. We'll see what happens under Biden, but I don't expect anything great under him either. I mean, Biden was in there for 80 years, nothing happened, and there's going to be another 8 years of Biden with nothing happening. But under Trump, we deteriorated significantly in the world, or in terms of our world standing, right? Because a lot of people will say, well, America under Trump became more powerful. We're more about America, America first. America first means America last. America first literally means America last. Do you know why?
Why?
Well, why do you think?
I don't know. Sorry, that took a while.
That's fine. Well, what do you think about picture? I don't know what's a good social situation that people can relate to. School. Everybody has been to school. Picture your high school, right? What happens to the who was the most popular person in your school?
I don't know. Bad person to ask.
Okay. Who was the most popular? In any social situation, was there ever a popular person that you've seen and experienced
Okay.
being around or having known them a little bit?
Okay.
Right? What kind of characteristics did those people have? Did they, for instance, incessantly brag about themselves?
No.
Did they constantly say that they are the number one?
No.
Did they constantly insist on being the best at everything, even though evidence pointed to the opposite? No, they were competent. They were good. They were probably the popular person in your high school was probably good, at least competent in something.
Yeah.
Kind and decent to other people.
Yeah.
Trying to be a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
They were if there was a person, if a male person, like a guy, they were probably exhibited their alpha status by being gentle and caring and decent to people who are weaker than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
What we got for the last 4 years is the bully America. The America who may be notorious, but who nobody would actually love or like or make popular. Nobody would vote for this America as the class president.
Right.
Why? Nobody would vote for this America as the prom king. Because in school, in the Hollywood movies, you always see these like asshole guys sometimes become like the prom king or whatever. But in real life, you very, very, very seldomly see complete and utter self-absorbed assholes become leaders if it's up to people to put them in that position, because people really generally don't like those kinds of people.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah. Now, the only reason Trump is successful is because Trump was able to run on the us versus them model. The us versus them model is very popular.
Interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, you can run on two models, right? You can become popular and you can become famous, and you can in your group, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your group, you can become popular and famous by either being so undeniably, like if you're men, for instance, so undeniably alpha that you don't have to fight anybody. A lion doesn't go around fighting every, like, the king of the the savannah, the main the lion, the leader of the pride, doesn't go around fighting every other single lion, right? He will occasionally growl from afar, right? But for the most part, and if a lion becomes too much of an asshole, then a bunch of smaller lions will gang up and kick him out of the pride. That's how they lose their status. That happens all the time. With monkeys, that happens all the time too, right? It's usually not the most dominant, most aggressive, most assholey monkey who wins. It's the most kind, most caring monkey who also has aggressive personality and is big and strong who wins, right? Because it's able to maintain the loyalty of the women while still maintaining the dominance over the rest of the male in their tribe, in their group, in their monkey community, right? So we see that all the time. So in the world, the same kind of dynamic plays out. America was powerful and strong and important in the past because we were two things. We were powerful, we were strong, and we were kind, and we were helpful, right? So you,
You were
so
competent.
we were competent, but we were also kind and helpful,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We wanted to help others.
Yeah.
We didn't scream America first, fuck everybody else,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, America first, you pay your way, right? No. We acted as if money doesn't matter. We acted as if, no, we're so powerful, we're so strong, we're going to come and help you when you need help. Just remember who was your friend when you needed help, right?
Yeah.
And this is how we were able to exude soft power. Soft power is very important. Soft power is how you don't get wars. Soft power is how you can get your way without. It's soft power is basically getting a seat at a table at a restaurant because the Metro D likes you because you were kind to them or nice to them in the past, right? Soft power is getting somebody who you smiled at to do something for you even though they really didn't have to, right? People, unfortunately, like Donald Trump, don't understand that kind of power. They only understand power, hard power. I force you to do things, you do things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand the soft power of, oh, you helped me before, I'm going to help you out now.
Yeah.
Right? You helped me before when I was hit by that hurricane. Nah, I'm going to go ahead and vote on this national security resolution the way you want me to and against Russia or something like that.
Right.
Right? If I'm Brazil or some other kind of country like that, right? Or Nicaragua or, any number of countries out there. And that's something that I hope does come back with Biden, so America's ability to exude soft power throughout the world. But I think it's very important to see how we ended up here. And we ended up here because Donald Trump ran on the us versus them platform versus the us platform. The us platform is America.
So how has the Trump administration changed things practically, or like how did he change things? Because I never imagined that he did many things.
He didn't.
He simply was a reflection of our times. We have this pervasive culture of like it's all about me with social media, with like people saying, look at me, look at me, look at all the awesome things I have, look at my life, look at how awesome it is. Whether it's real or not, that's up in the air. But it doesn't matter so long as you are the biggest bragger in the world, and you're doing the coolest.
That's true, yeah.
And you're doing the coolest things, people will look at you and think that you're important.
Yeah. So that's correct. That's right. But it's important to note that I think
Donald Trump did not bring back manufacturing to America.
Oh, no, he didn't do shit about that.
Donald Trump started a war, or rather a diplomatic war with China, saying, we're going to sanction your goods if you don't buy enough soybeans,
of American goods,
from our farmers.
Which I think also, by the way, let's come back. Let's talk about that for a moment, right? I think that was a really bad mistake on our part.
Why?
Because you don't start a war with China and demand nothing in return. Right? What did he demand? Oh, buy more of our stuff?
Yeah.
That's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
That's fucking stupid.
Lighthizer was demanding more protection for American intellectual property.
That's different. That's what we want, right? So how about why don't we start there? Instead of starting with, you don't buy enough of our soybeans, because that's easy for China. They'll be, okay, we'll cut you a check, right? Just keep buying our shit.
Yeah.
The deficit between China and America is worse now than it was when Donald Trump came in.
Okay.
It is. You can look it up. It's numbers. It's a little chart. And anybody who doubts me, before you leave an angry comment in the comments, go look it up. It's worse. Okay. It is. And people be like, well, it would have been worse even more. How do you know? How do you know it would have been worse? Maybe it would have been better.
Yeah.
But the point is, you want to dominate China. You don't want China to become, the next superpower. Well, I mean, first of all, you shouldn't care about whether or not China becomes the next superpower, right? China deserves to be the next superpower. They have 1.5 billion people living in that fucking country. They deserve to have some power, right? They deserve to have a say in how this world progresses. because there's more of them than us by fivefold. So they do deserve something. But we don't deserve to be a shitty third world nation who doesn't manufacture anything. You know who also doesn't manufacture anything? Lithuania doesn't manufacture shit. Ukraine doesn't manufacture shit. Russia doesn't manufacture shit. Moldova doesn't manufacture shit. Right? They manufacture some things, but very, very few things. And they're third world nations. What makes us any better if we don't manufacture anything, right? So you want to actually start.
Brazil doesn't manufacture anything.
Whereas Brazil manufactures a shit ton of things.
What do they manufacture?
Natural resources. Sugar, bricks, cement,
meat.
Meat. I didn't know about meat.
They process some meat.
They do love meat.
They export coffee, I believe.
Coffee. I mean, we produce cotton.
And they export shoes.
Shoes, but Brazil is a third world nation.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's true.
We deserve to be able to export cars, computers, chips. Take microchips, for instance.
We used to be able to do those things.
Yeah, we used to be able to do microchips.
Yeah.
We had foundries.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have foundries anymore. TSMC is actually building a foundry in Arizona, which is very, very cool. I'm very excited about that. That might get the ball rolling. But it's a shame. It's a tremendous shame that we let go of those resources. And it's a very complicated discussion of why that happened. But primarily due to the growth. We built our entire society on a growth obligation. We have an obligation to grow, and we just can't.
It's due to the I don't know.
The 80s. It's my least favorite period in
capitalism.
time. Yeah.
Well, we're reading a book called In Search of Excellence that was published in 1982, I believe.
Well, it was written in late 70s. Yeah.
Probably late 70s, early 80s, and it was published in 1982. And they're already complaining about how America is falling down the shit.
Because it started then.
Yeah.
I know, and it accelerated. It accelerated on the the Gordon Gekko and the Reagan administration and the fictitious Gordon Gekko and his and the greed.
Take no prisoners.
Yeah, the Trump.
Capitalism.
But like basically everything that Trump stood for in the 80s is what came and bit us in the fucking ass today.
But don't forget that also the 90s did us a disservice with Clinton signing the Graham-Leahy or whatever it was called, the separation of the banks from.
Yes. What the fuck is that called? Fuck. It was a safety something. You're right. It had two names. It was two senators who introduced it. It was a bill that separated and prevented investment banks from being able to operate as or rather, the other way around. It prevented retail banks from operating as investment banks.
Yeah.
Because this is a confusion point for a lot of people because both terms, investment banks and retail banks, have the word bank in them.
Yeah.
So people kind of assume they're the same thing. But historically they have been extraordinarily different. It's as different. Well, I don't know. A good simile doesn't come into my mind right now. But basically, investment banks were groups of very rich people who took their own money, put it together, and then as a group invested it into things. That was investment banking.
So, like American blue chip corporations or something like that? Or
No. Like more speculative bets. They would do
railroads or
railroads. They would invest in startup companies. They would invest in maybe very speculative hedges against currency fluctuations, against oil fluctuations, things like that. Basically, it's gambling. It's gambling for extremely rich people who don't really feel like playing poker or some shit like that.
Gotcha.
Right? And who think that they understand the economy better than most, and perhaps they do, right?
Yeah.
So, like back in the day, that was if you were an investor banker, you were investing for people who put their own money on the line knowingly, with the expectations of reward. So the most important thing I should say that I always talk about was attached there: risk and reward. Risk must always be attached to the reward potential.
Right.
If
So the higher the risk, the higher the
the higher
reward.
the risk, the higher the reward. But more importantly, you always have to have the risk. Like the reason why you're getting the reward is that's society compensating you for
For
the risk
taking the
that you've
risk.
taken,
Yeah.
right? The problem is,
Because there's also a greater percentage when you have high risks of losing that
yeah, exactly.
bet.
So you make a bet that pays off 5 to 1. If you win, you get 5 times more than what you put in into the bet, right?
Right.
That's very, very lucrative. That's what you get with like options and option contracts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of hedges.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of optional hedges, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're 5 times more likely to lose than you are to win. Otherwise, it's an unfair bet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is you want to find the bets and most bets in an open market are going to be pretty fair. And then there's going to be some bets that are going to be a little bit tweaked, a little bit unfair. Maybe you understand the angle a little bit better than the other people, so you might be able to take that bet, and maybe you calculate it to be 4 to 1 odds, whereas everybody else is giving you 5 to 1 odds,
Mm-hmm.
and you're probably going to lose it. But if you win it by a larger margin, and if it's worth it to you, that's how you invest. That's fine, right? For instance, what's his name? That Greek fellow that we like, who does investments. Who talk about the long tails of investments?
Don't remember.
What's his name? He's also Sam Harris's nemesis for some reason.
Greek fellow?
Yeah, the guy.
Oh, the old guy?
No, the guy who writes the Black Swan. He wrote Black Swan.
Oh, Taleb.
Nassim Taleb. Yeah. So
he's Greek.
I think he's Greek or like
Okay, I
Greek
wasn't.
Orthodox. He talks
I
about
didn't
how
know.
Greek Orthodox is
Okay. I didn't
Greek
know that.
Orthodox. Plus Nassim, I think that's a Greek name.
No idea.
Maybe I'm wrong. Whatever. Maybe he's. Oh my God. Maybe he's not even Greek. In any case, Nassim Taleb though is pretty awesome dude, and he writes about.
Well, we don't know him personally, but his writing is interesting.
His writing is interesting. He says what he means. He means what he says. I appreciate that in people. He's a singular individual in that way. Most people will bullshit you to your face, and I think he's pretty honest. He's pretty honest when he makes mistakes too. But in any case, his style of investment, he loses money 90% of the time, and he wins huge 10% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point. And the reason why that investment style works is because it's extraordinarily difficult emotionally to do. And most people are unable to do it for many good reasons, and as a result, stay away from it. But he takes those risks with his own money,
Mm-hmm.
and then he banks the rewards with his own money.
Mm-hmm.
What would be extremely unfair is if Nassim Taleb, for instance, was to take those risks with somebody else's money, but receive all the reward.
Mm.
And that's what retail banks wanted for themselves. Retail banks didn't have a bunch of rich people who were willing to put a bunch of money on the line to play in the market.
To gamble in the market.
Instead, retail banks had a bunch of
Average Joes.
A bunch of fucking mechanics and plumbers and doctors and lawyers and typists and electricians and shit, putting their hard-earned savings into the bank just to earn that little, couple of percentage points of an interest, or to just be able to, pay their bills and shit with checks instead of sending boxes of cash or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a result, but the retail banks saw the huge profits that the investment banks were making in the 80s and in the early 90s in the markets, and they were like, well, we want some of that. Well, the difference is investment banks, they're playing with their own money. They're playing with the money of people who said, yeah, go ahead, play with our money. We trust you, right?
Okay.
That's why we put our money with you guys,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Schwab or whatever, the retail banks, they were like, well, we want some of that,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't have any money that we can gamble with
Mm-hmm.
because the law.
So then they went and lobbied the government.
Yeah, because the law prohibits us to gamble with the money that people entrust to us.
Yeah.
So
Do you mind if I look this up? What the actual name of the bill was? Because it's important.
Yeah, we should look it up. It's Graham.
bleachy. I don't know why I'm.
God damn it! It really fell out of my head as well. Look up 1990 investment bank law.
Graham-Leach Act. Graham-Leach-Bliley, also known as the Financial Services Modernization Act of
Yes.
1999. Of
Yeah.
1999? I don't think that's it.
No. It was earlier.
The Graham-Leach-Bliley Act requires financial institutions, companies that offer consumers financial products or services like loans, financial or investment advice, or insurance to explain their information sharing practices to their customers and to safeguard sensitive data.
No, that's different.
Okay, so this was signed in 1992 by
92 is when it was signed.
Financial Act. Sorry, I'm looking this up. It's taking a while. The Glass-Steagall legislation.
Glass-Steagall. That's yes.
So according to Wikipedia here, the Glass-Steagall legislation describes 4 provisions of the United States Banking Act of 1933, separating commercial and investment banking.
Oh, and by the way, the reason why they were separated before was from 1933. This is 1929, the whole crash, which was caused by the banks. Well, in part by the banks. Because remember, the whole crash was caused because these assholes were borrowing money to people so people can buy stocks, and you created and inflated this enormous bubble in the stocks, and then the whole thing crashed.
Yeah, and everybody was committing suicide because they lost more money than they had.
Which is good. I always applaud people for committing suicide.
Anyways, Americans really love a bubble.
Yeah, they love inflating it, and then they love bitching about it when it pops.
Yeah, we have like a bubble like every 10, 20 years. Anyways, let's read a little bit more. It says, as for the Glass-Steagall Act of 1932, the common name comes from the names of the congressional sponsors, Senator Carter Glass and Representative Henry B. Steagall. The separation of commercial and investment banking prevented securities firms and investment banks from taking deposits and commercial Federal Reserve member banks from dealing in non-governmental securities for customers.
There. So what they basically did is they said because remember after the whole 1929, after the bank runs, the government started to insure bank accounts.
Well, this is why in 1913 we instituted the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. Well, no.
Yeah, they were bank runs, and then in 1913 they.
No, that was the Federal Reserve. But didn't we start? When did they start the whole federal where the federal government backs your bank account, your deposit account?
I don't know. I think
it was after 1929, but I may be wrong about that.
FDIC insurance.
FDIC insurance. Yeah, when did the FDIC insurance start? I want to say 1933 as well, but I might be wrong about that. Because before that, it was just backed by gold.
1933.
1933, yeah.
June 16th, 1933.
Yeah. That's when all the banks went out. Not all, but a lot of the banks went out of business.
Oh, actually, it started January 1st, 1934.
Whatever.
It says federal deposit insurance became effective on January 1st, 1934, providing depositors with $2,500 in coverage, and by any measure, it was an immediate success in restoring public confidence and stability to the banking system.
Yeah.
Only 9 banks failed in 1934 compared to the 9,000 in the preceding 4 years.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason why the banks were failing back then is obviously because a lot of people took out a lot of loans to buy stocks and other stuff with them, and they were completely
Well, they had no more money left.
They didn't have any money, and some of them killed themselves, obviously. So the banks have no ability to really recover any of that money. So they went out. But the real reason why those banks failed, I mean, if you want a real reason, is because they were too greedy. They were when they
over leveraged themselves.
Well, they over leveraged. No, they loaned money to over leverage people.
Okay.
It wasn't their, but the problem was it wasn't their money to loan.
Was it other people's money?
Yeah, it was other people's money. This is why FDIC had to come in. This is why we had bank runs, because a lot of hardworking people were putting their money in the banks, hoping to get a little bit of a return on their investment and stuff. in the banks.
And those people's monies were lent out to
People
gamblers?
people who were gambling with it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And then when it collapsed,
And
the hardworking
the
people
hard work being got nothing.
came back to collect their money, and there was nothing to collect.
Yep.
I see.
Because the ant always gets screwed and the grasshopper always wins. And I always get mad about that, and you for some reason always defend the grasshopper.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just have a underdog defense.
They're not the underdog. They always win because we never punish people for making stupid decisions. We're like,
Complex.
oh, well, they're already punished enough for losing everything that they own. No, they didn't even commit. You know, if you were in 1933 and you didn't commit suicide, you deserve to be killed. You should commit suicide because you knew it was coming. You knew it was coming and you were greedy. 1929, rather, 1933. You know, anyways, this is why we, got the FDIC insurance, and this is also why, we had this Glass-Steagall Act, and this is why American financial industry, right, wasn't really that big of a deal, right? It only became a big deal in the 80s and then in 92, right? Because it grew in popularity during the whole savings and loan thing in the 80s. It grew and grew and grew, the financial industry, and then it hit its prime in 1992. And then just kind of skyrocketed from there. The financial industry is the biggest fucking industry in America right now. By money, by the number of people they employ, by everything. We're like...
Well, right now, America has very little...
That's the only export we have.
Yeah, we have...
We export
creative
money.
financial engineering.
Yeah.
That we export.
I mean, if you think about it, the only thing we export is dollars.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, yeah, we export some soybeans too, and occasionally steel and some tractors,
and some pork.
And some pork, but mostly it's dollars.
That's a sad state of things, right?
Yeah.
Not only are you making your population stupider because they don't know how to make anything.
Yeah, and by stupider, what we really mean is like our population doesn't really know how things are made. Like an average person in China understands more about their everyday life and how things are made around them than an average person in America.
Yeah, and how things work.
And how things work.
Like the infrastructure.
Yeah. We don't build infrastructure anymore.
We're so ignorant that, at the grand old age of 32, I think that's how old I am, I find it extraordinary when the utility company turns off electricity because of the wildfire risks when the winds pick up.
Well, what else can they do?
And I thought that would never happen in a first world country.
Oh, just to brag a little bit, given how awesome we are, we're now off grid. Well, we have been off grid always, but now we're off grid with 20 kilowatts of battery storage that we just installed. I just finished welding up a cart for new batteries. So we have a huge new cart of lithium iron batteries that carts around 20 kilowatts on it. And we're now running into a slight problem where we're producing too much electricity, and now we're looking for things to use electricity for.
And we don't have enough batteries. Oh, maybe we should charge the batteries we have outside.
We should.
The interim batteries.
Yeah, we should charge the interim batteries. That's a really good point. I was actually thinking about that as well today. So we're gonna do that as soon as this podcast is over.
Since we have really good sun, and we also redid the solar in our house.
Oh yeah.
And we installed entirely new solar panels and found out that our chimney stack. Is it stack or stag?
I thought it was stack.
Stack.
I don't know why it would be called stag. I always assumed it was called the chimney stack because it was literally like a stack of bricks that's done in a circle. But
I think it's STAG, to be honest.
Can you look it up?
But it's
we're gonna learn something today. We're gonna learn whether or not it's. And I don't really want to come back to the two ways you can become president in America. So you look that up, and then we'll come back to that.
I learned a word for that.
So is it chimney stack or chimney stag?
Stack.
Stack.
Smokestack. Chimney stack.
Yeah, because you stack the bricks in a circle around it.
Yeah, our chimney stack casts a shadow that I think it starts around 2, like around this time of the day.
Uh-huh.
Actually, it's
a chimney stack, by the way, is a pipe made out of steel, not an actual stack made out of bricks. But
yeah. Anyways, Jack, I need to run to the toilet for just a little
All
minute.
right. Well, I'll entertain the listeners, and I'll tell them about my idea about how you can become president of the United States. I believe you can become president by doing two things, basically. You can either have an enemy, and I believe that's how Donald Trump won, um, by running on the platform of, half the country is evil because they're evil liberals, and half the country is good because they're the nice, benign conservatives or whatever, and we're gonna make America great again. So I mean, I think it's a hopeful message in some ways, but it's also a very like enemy orientated message, and I don't like that message. I think that's wrong, for many different reasons. Then there's another message, and that's the one that Obama ran on, and that was like the message of hope and hope and change. That's what he ran on, and I believe that that's the right message. Now, the question is whether or not Obama actually achieved that message. That's a different topic of conversation. I don't think so in many ways. But the point is that there is two ways to run. You can run by promising people, the world and painting a picture of amazingness. And I think Biden tried to do that with his whole new green, agenda a little bit. But I don't know. I still haven't seen any politician really lean. Everybody leans into how terrible things are. And, we talk about how terrible things are as well. But I really want somebody to talk
I'm
about.
back.
Oh, yeah, we heard because you detached the microphone.
I'm sorry. What, you really want somebody who has a vision and who speaks of the future as opposed to the past and how we fucked up in the past, right?
Yeah, and I think the vision of the future could be. So actually, we started this whole podcast. So I'm gonna stop it, and whatever. If you guys voted for Trump and you like Trump, that's fine. I don't actually see anything wrong with like conservative points of view. I just really hate that guy because he's an asshole. And if you don't think he's an asshole, I think you really should. If you don't think he's an asshole, you're probably an asshole. So go fuck off, to be honest. But if you do admit that he's an asshole, but you agree with his policies, then I get it. I get your point. I still think he's too much of an asshole to elect, even if you agree with his policies. But I get where you're coming from in that regard. And I do think that we can build better America, though. We can build like the Ray Dalio America that one of my favorite writers on economics issues recently has been writing. We can build better America. We can build an educated America. And I'm not talking about
Jack, do you think we can, sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt you, a better America without a competitor?
Yeah.
Because back in the day,
Well, China is a competitor
but America does not see China as a competitor as of yet.
because they're idiots.
Remember
They're fucking idiots. You're right about
we
that.
talked about this in one of our previous episodes on this podcast. In the 50s, 60s, we had the Cold War with the Soviet Union. We saw them as competitors. And that's what propelled America to invent the not the hydrogen bomb, but
Also what propelled America to go to the moon,
yeah,
and to invent the computer, to improve the infrastructure, to do a bunch of fucking things, right?
Right. And right now we have fallen asleep at the wheel, maybe because we've been really busy figuring out how to destroy ourselves with this money engineering situation.
Well, it's not even just money situation. It's just I think in America have been too preoccupied with
Stuff.
Yeah, literal stuff, and also just the disputes, in these culture wars that we are experiencing all the time. Which,
well, it's not culture wars per se. Well, what kind of culture wars are you referring to?
Well, in the 90s, and I don't want to go into politics because again I want to have a vision of what can be great about America. But we'll dive into it really quickly. Like in the 90s, we had all these like Christian American values people, like leave it. Basically, it was killing. Let's call the 90s killing. Leave it to Beaver. Like this whole like wholesome America was murdered in the 90s, as it deserved to, because it wasn't wholesome. It was actually a bunch of bullshit. Hollywood bullshits. America wasn't.
Oh yeah, 90s was this whole grunge culture about saying fuck to everything normal and normcore.
So that too, and and I think the main divide is that basically there are some people who, it's a standard divide in every society. Some people want to progress further and want to abandon traditions, and some people want to cling on to traditions. I actually had a funny thought the other day when I was extremely high that uh, conservatives cling on to things that liberals create. And it's so true. And I mean, this is going to be like really upsetting. And a bunch of people are probably right now feverishly typing how much of an asshole I am, but and an idiot. But it is true because every tradition is created by a liberal and then propagated by a conservative.
Why is that?
If you think about it,
give me an example. Thanksgiving tomorrow, was it started by a liberal?
It was started by a liberal and created by because think
Do
about.
you have any evidence?
Yes. What kind of person
would reach out to Indians?
What kind of person would go across the ocean?
A liberal person.
What kind of person would go across the ocean when they didn't know what was on the other side?
A liberal person.
What kind of person would go across the ocean when they didn't even have a picture of what it looks like?
Maybe stories, like oral
what
stories?
kind of person person who's brave, who's curious about the world, who wants to make a lot of money. Liberals are not
well, they didn't come necessarily for the money. They came for the religious freedom, right? Who? A lot of the people that came to America.
A lot of the people who came to America. Okay, so you're right. A lot of people who came to America came here for religious freedoms. But again, what kind of, because you have to remember, conservative doesn't just, we have a perverse idea of a conservative. So let's define these terms a little bit, because we have perverse ideas of what a conservative and a liberal is, right? A conservative is simply a person who prioritizes safety over exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And a liberal is simply a person who prioritizes exploration over safety, right? So a conservative is the kind of person who would be in your little tribe. Let's say you're a tribe, and let's say another tribe is like 10 miles away. And a liberal would be like a person who's like, hey, there's another tribe over there. Hey, let's go say hi. Maybe we can be friends.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can trade with them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they know something we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can sell them something. Maybe they have cool women. But a conservative would be like, no. We should stay away. We should cover up, and we should put up our bushes so they don't even see us. And we should probably like migrate a little bit further away too.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally conservative.
You are, and I told you that from the beginning. But the point is that both of these people have a valid reason to exist. This is why our populations are roughly 50-50 conservative liberal in most places for the same fucking reasons, because both of those philosophies, both of those ideas about the world, first of all, they're very generic. It's just like, it's just some part of your body in your brain somewhere, like, some neuron is simply more biased towards safety than it is towards curiosity, or more biased towards curiosity than it is towards safety, But by nature, humans are very curious. But if we were exclusively curious, we would all be dead now, and there would be no humans. And then I would be a monkey, and I'll be talking to you as another monkey 10 trillion years from now. I don't know. Or however monkeys, I think, evolved into like the Stone Age by now. So maybe like we'll have monkey podcasts in another 50,000 years. But that's a high thought of its own variety. But I think that's how they wrote. What is it called?
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes. See, I was born too early. I could have came up with that all on my own. But in any case, The point that I'm trying to make is that you need both conservatives and liberals, and I think they serve both valid points, because the conservatives are the people who are like, no, don't go to that tribe. They're probably going to kill you, and they might, right? And then the liberal is like, no, we should go to that tribe because that's how we can learn how to have fire. Look at them. They have fire and we don't. Let's learn how to make fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the conservative and the liberal argue it out, and then they agree on a middle point where the conservative is like, okay, you go and you learn how to make fire, and I'm going to have a bow, presuming people had fire before they had bows, but this is a weird world. I'm going to have a bow, and I'm going to sit behind a bush, and if they start to kill you, I'm going to kill some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can make, okay, that's a reasonable strategy, let's do that. Right? So this is why you need both sides, right? the problem that we ran, so the the people who are liberal are the people who invent things. They
Mm.
find things. They find fire. They go make friends with the tribe next door, right? And then they bring the fire back. And then it's the conservatives who guard and protect the fire and make sure that the fire keeps burning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always like that. It's always, and then there's nothing wrong with that because again, without the conservatives, we would learn how to make the fire and then instantly forget how to make it,
Mm-hmm.
and then would suck or would get killed by because we would annoy every single tribe around ourselves, and as a result would get murdered by all those tribes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So conservatives are very important to propagation of our species,
Mm-hmm.
but liberals are very important for the progress of our species,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the butting of the heads is what creates the balance between um, the two groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that maybe you're right. We lacked so much the external threat since the 80s, really, since it was pretty obvious that Soviet Union is falling apart. We so much lacked an external threat that we started to like fight internally, where the conservatives are feeling more and more underappreciated because there's really not that much for them to conserve anymore. Um, and also politically, we like for instance, politically, I'll tell you this. Politically, it's beyond ridiculous to me that global warming, climate change, well, global warming is climate change, but the whole global warming climate change discussion is not a conservative issue.
Mm-hmm.
It should be by all fucking standards. It should be like I'm thinking about it from a point of view of like land preservation, forest preservation, lake preservation. Like having clean environment, clean air, the way it used to be for thousands of years. Like that's the fact that some people manage to their own benefit, of course, to shimmy that somehow into a liberal as opposed to a conservative
Well,
issue.
I don't see it that way. I see it as a change, and somebody who's a conservative would not be willing to admit there is a change. You know,
So it's
things.
like they're acting as a small scale conservatives in terms of instead of large scale
Yeah.
conservatives. They're not looking at like, well, for the last 10,000 years the world has been this way and now we're shifting it to be that way. They're looking at, well, for the last 50 years the world has been this way and then we're shifting it that way. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
I can see that. But
Yeah.
that's so small-minded though.
Well, most humans don't understand that we are a continuum of the people, our ancestors. I I was in fact explaining this to my mother the other day. I was telling her how her mother probably um, rose from the jungle, and she felt probably very lucky to live in a civilized farm, where she had electricity. And then
Mhm.
my mother moved from the farm to the city because she couldn't stand the farm life and having to deal with animals and poverty, or what she deemed to be
So I
poverty.
guess, and then when do you go from there?
And then from there you get to me, and presumably I would have had a career, which I don't, and I've gone back to sort of like my grandma, to being again sort of like a wanderer.
People do have a tendency to live in cycles like that. That is actually a funny thing. Like, you see that over and over again in almost every society. You have generations, like generations go up, 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 and then down again, and up, 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 and down again, up, and down again, in terms of their wealth. But I do think it's because, and it really ties in well, probably, into that conversation that we had earlier about empathy and then Marilyn Monroe and how she committed suicide or OD'd, we don't know. Um, and maybe it's because we're all searching for something and we still can't find it, like in a loop almost like like in that TV show that we watched, the German TV
The
show,
dark.
The Dark, yeah,
Yeah.
where like everything happens in a loop, and those people still relive the same lives, whether it's in 1800s or the 1900s or the 2000s or the future or the
Right.
past, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like they
Yeah.
still relive the same lives of the same bullshit, different day, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because they can't help but being human.
they can, but I think the cycle, this little circle. So, a day laborer has a son who becomes a plumber, who has a son who becomes, an accountant, who has a son who becomes an attorney, who has a son who becomes an artist, who has a son who becomes a day laborer again because the artist dies without any money,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and then just the whole thing starts all over again, right? But
Right.
every one of these people seeks something new and it never attains it,
Right. Yeah.
right? Because they're consistently unhappy with life, right? And then we were talking about Marilyn Monroe, and you were saying how, like, well, why did she kill herself? Well, because she's an artist. Her mom was probably, her mom was probably some kind of baker, or I don't know, some person. I don't know much about her life, but let's say her mom was a baker, and the mother of Marilyn Monroe's mother, her grandmother was maybe like a home baker or homemaker or a farmer, and then before that, maybe they came on a boat here or something like that, and it just keeps going up and up and up, and then she hit. She was fucking the president of the United States. She was in every movie. She was making a ton of money, and she was still unhappy, right?
Yeah.
Where do you go from there? Well, there's nothing better. If you're Marilyn Monroe at her prime in that,
You could have gone to a quiet life away from
but
the
every single person
spotlight.
in the world, every single part of America, through and through, every single fiber of our culture screams, no, what you want is what you have.
What does that mean? Oh, to Marilyn
To
Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe,
To
yeah.
Marilyn Monroe. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. They scream, what you
Yeah.
want is what you have.
Yeah.
And she says, like, but I don't want it.
Yeah.
And like, no, what you want is what you, but I don't want it. This is horrible. I, I don't know where to go from here. Maybe death is the answer.
Or having better friends.
But again, how do you have better friends as Marilyn Monroe? How?
You can't.
You can't. That's
Yeah.
that's empathy, honey. See, finally,
Yeah.
you're getting it. You can't.
You can't.
You can't. And then you're stuck. And then you are home. And then you're alone in your room. And you know as soon as you go outside, there'll be people demanding your autograph and people screaming and tearing at you. And you know that as soon as you look out of the window, there'll be people trying to take a photograph of you. And you close the curtains and you look at your bottle of sleeping pills and you say to yourself, I can't go on anymore. There is nothing I can do that's better than this. And this sucks. So I'm going to take this bottle of these drugs and I'm going to go to sleep and the pain will end because there is everything I've tried to end this pain and I've achieved the end. I achieved the finish line and it's still painful and it still sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm going to do it.
Do you think this is what happens with every single famous person that dies at an early age?
Yes, I think I do. I think you do because they reached, just like that guy Kurt Cobain or whatever his name, who killed himself. They reached the epitome. They everything they dream of, they run out of dreams. That's the real situation. People kill themselves when they run out of dreams. Everything that they dreamed of came to be.
Achieved.
They have no more dreams.
Yeah.
They have no more dreams, and this is why
no ability to pivot and do something else.
You need vision for that. And when you're in that dark hole, you don't have that vision. And people don't create that vision for you because people don't want to tell you, oh, Marilyn Monroe, oh, you are very successful, but you are unhappy. And because you're unhappy, I think you need to do something else. Because everybody who was around her at that point stood to benefit from her continuing to be famous, and no one around her cared about her.
Oh, I see. That's the worst.
That's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of being famous. That's the reality. But the reality is wrong. And the reality is what's fucking us over right now. Because we live these hollow little lives. And we try to achieve the best that we can. But what? To propagate the species? Think about how fucking miserable. Imagine, for a second, hell. Hell would be Making America great again. Making America so great that it stays exactly like it was in the 1950s for the, well, let's say we forget about the whole hating the gays and the blacks and the Jews, and we just concentrate on the whole leave it to beaver kind of life. If that was for the rest of days, and you lived like that for 10, let's say for 10,000 more years, we have 10,000 years of perfect 1950s style prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who gets born on that 10,001st day, or the 10,001st year, I should say, um, looks back and looks at our history and says, like, wow, look at that. For 10,000 years, we've done this. I'm still not very happy. But we tried it for 10,000 fucking years. I think it's time to kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
Our dreams are so fucking small.
Isn't it like Groundhog Day?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be annoying if you just kept waking every time you kill yourself. You
Yeah,
keep waking up to the
just
same.
You just wake up to the same thing. But
And you can't get out of the loop.
but that's the thing. That's life. Life is a loop. You live and you die, and then you get born again, and you live and you die, and you get born again, and you live and you die, and you get born again, and you live and you die. I mean, that's life, right? Like people say, no, you only have one life. How do you know? How do you know there's like 1,000th life you live in, and you still suck at it? So shut up, pretending you know shit. The point that I'm trying to make here, however, is that our dreams are too small, not just on a personal level, but on a societal level. You know when our dreams were huge? When we looked at a moon, the other day I was looking through a telescope at a moon, and I looked at it and I saw it as a rock, right? You very, very seldomly do you see a moon as a rock, right? You always see it as, oh, it's a moon. It's probably made out of cheese. It's yellow, right? But then you look at it through a telescope and you can see little craters. You can actually see the fucking rocks on it. You can see the features of those rocks. You can see that it's literally a ball made out of rock. First thing that comes to your mind, especially if you see a full moon through a telescope and you see it closely, is that it's a fucking rock shaped like a ball. Right? And then you just really think about gravity and understand how that's a rock shaped out of a ball because of a curvature in time, not even space, because people think space-time, blah, blah, blah. No, there's no curvature in fucking space. There's only curvature in time. And a curvature in time caused by the ball itself made it into a ball. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you think to yourself, wow, I'm going to go to that ball. That's a fucking dream. That's a dream that we had in the 1950s. That's what made that fucking era special. Not the fact that we had Leave It to Beaver households. Not the fact that we had fucking picket fences around ourselves. That's all garbage. That's garbage that people like Donald Trump want to concentrate on. We had a fucking dream, and the dream was to go to a rock that shaped itself into a ball because of space and time being curved.
Mm-hmm.
And now we don't have that dream anymore. Now our dream is to get the latest iPad, to get a phone that has a slightly larger screen while being a little bit less heavy.
Or to get the most eyeballs on whatever content you create.
Well,
or
that's attention. And people always wanted attention. That is a desire as old as dirt itself. But the desire to, I mean, arguably that's why that asshole tried to become a god. But
human desires are still the same. We want respect, admiration. We want to be entertained. We want to have fun. We want to be respected in our communities.
I'll give you an example of that. And this is something that a lot of people never experienced in their life, and some people experience nowadays very seldomly. When was the last time when you figured something out that it was very difficult for you to figure out? So for a long time, you've been sitting there, you've been trying to figure it out, and then you finally figured it out. And then when you figured it out, you had like this feeling of joy of discovery.
I haven't experienced that, but I hope to experience that with that chair I'm restoring over the last 2 years.
But I mean, I'm sure you've experienced it on a small scale with other things. right? Like figuring out how to weld something, or when we made that car, for instance, I know I did most of the welding, but we planned it out together and we did it together.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a certain feeling. It's like both pride and joy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the most intense joy you'll ever experience, and it's probably it's probably on the level of like having children and then having your children succeed, and you feel both pride and joy in seeing them succeed
Because you've raised
because you take credit for it, basically.
self-confident children.
Or you just take credit for it because you created them, right? So it's the same thing, like, but you can have that pride and joy. You can experience it every day, even without annoying your children well into their adulthood, by actually discovering things, learning things for yourself, trying really hard things and achieving them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think enough people in America do that right now. Not
Mm-hmm.
enough people in America learn things
Mm-hmm.
after they leave college or after they leave high school, or after they do something. Not enough of them learn things that have nothing to do with their job or anything like that. Just for fun. Just do, like, for instance, do some really complicated math just for fun, just to see if you can do it, and learn about it. And find it if you find math interesting. If not, then another language, something that another recipe, something that you find. But doing something that's difficult, intellectually and maybe physically as well. That's something that a lot of people in America could certainly benefit from, given the fact that we're dying from COVID at unprecedented rates because we're all fucking fat asses. But doing something difficult and then succeeding at it is incredibly joyful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's joy that we have stolen from ourselves
Mm-hmm.
by idolizing laziness. We idolize laziness. We really do. We idolize people who succeed without trying. We idolize people like superheroes, for instance. Superheroes never have to try; they just succeed, right? They just
Oh,
get.
this is why they have interpersonal struggles.
This is why, yeah, they need something, but that's like, oh my god.
They have the struggle that they want to be loved. They always have
Yeah.
that
Well,
struggle that
everybody
they're
wants that.
different. They're different, and they're ugly ducklings, and
Well,
they don't fit in. And
that's
then
also the
they're
demographic they're trying to appeal to. So
finding love is the thing they have to do.
yeah, it's also like I said, demographic they're trying to appeal to. But the point I'm trying to make though is this idea of like struggling well is a good idea, and I think people there's a certain joy to succeeding in that regard, and I think if you could show people that again, if you could show people that we should shoot for the stars and we can probably make it there, I think we can have a much better society. I think we can have a much more cohesive society. I think we can have a society that um would certainly beat out the whatever China is building. I think they're trying to build something similar, but I think we can do it better.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could lead the world. But the problem that I see is the problem also of hatred towards globalism. We're so prideful right now. We're so concentrated on like making America great again. We forget that we live in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it's important to be a leader in that world,
Mm-hmm.
because if we are not the leader in that world, then China will be.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they win. They don't want us to be the leader in the world. They would rather we left, so that way China and Russia can have a go at it. But it's kind of like, think about it as a tribe of older gorillas, and you have this older gorilla, America, who just walks around, and the Russia and the China are like the two young gorillas who are like, who want their seat at the table. They know they can't take on America directly, so they're hoping that they can just like get America distracted enough with their own shit, so that way they can come in and kind of take over.
Mm-hmm.
And did you see how rich and how in minerals and resources Africa is, and how many people there are in Africa? Did you know that the continent of Africa has something like 1 point something? Look it up. It's well over 1 billion people in Africa.
And why is that important?
Because it's a huge continent with enormous amounts of wealth and resource. And it's a continent after which China is going after. And I think it's a continent that we could go after.
1.2 billion.
1.2 billion people. 1.2 billion people. Tremendous amounts of resources.
I'm sorry. Let me. 1 point. Oh, yeah. 1.216 billion.
Yeah.
Although some people say it's 1.35.
Well, whatever. It's well over a billion. It's as close. Africa is as big as China, basically, in terms of population. It's as big as China.
Geographically, it's way bigger.
Geographically, it's way bigger.
Yeah.
Geographically, it's way richer.
Uh-huh.
Right? It has decent people in it who need to learn how to think of themselves as a united group. The problem with Africa primarily is that there's people always like to pridefully point out, oh, you just call Africa as if it was one country. Don't you know there's over 100 and blah blah blah. I don't know how many
tribes or
countries.
Ethnic group.
Well,
countries. Okay.
Yeah, there's the hundreds of tribes and ethnic groups, right?
Right.
And there's a statistic that is actually kind of very interesting is there is more genetic diversity within Africa than there is outside Africa.
Why is that?
So, for instance, you are part Asian and I'm part Soviet Union person, but like white, and we have more in common genetically than a person from one tribe and a person from another tribe 200 miles away in Africa. Our genetics are more similar than those people's genetics.
So making fun of the Hutus and Tutsis for being similar, looking very similar, but fighting each other,
Different?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, as long, what are they making? What are they doing? Rapid DNA tests before they're shutting people down?
Oh, maybe. And now there is a war in northern Ethiopia, I think, and Sudan.
Yeah, but again, that's because those people refuse to think of themselves as one people, right? And then all these assholes who will correct me and be like, "Oh, but there's 100 countries in Africa. You should be respectful to their cultures." No. You want to fix Africa? You want people to stop dying there? Get rid of those countries. When your country is as big as a fucking county of San Diego, you don't deserve to have a fucking country.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we call countries.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason why we're so insistent on them having individual... I mean, I'm not saying go in there with an army and conquer Africa and do that. I actually have a better plan for that. I have reverse colonialism that I would propose. I think we talked about it before, maybe. Did we talk about reverse colonialism?
Not on this podcast.
No? Oh, okay. Well, reverse colonialism is very simple. Basically, step 1, you make America great again, without Trump in it. Step 2, you make America fucking awesome. Step 3, you outsource the awesomeness of America to other countries by saying, hey, want to be as awesome as we are? Here's a rule book. You follow these rules, and we will allow you to join America. You can be part of America. You can be the 51st state, right? And there's a bunch of rules and a bunch of economic standards that they have to hit. But if they hit those standards and if they hit those rules and you deem them to be as good as America, and if they want to join your country, you can join your country. And then once you roll out this program, you go on an aggressive campaign to sell to the rest of the world how fucking amazing you are and why they should join you and do things the way you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's reverse colonialism.
And that's how we get a world order.
That's how you get a world order. Yeah, I am a globalist, but I'm a globalist. I want me to be in charge of the globe, of course. But and that's what I don't get. This isolationist behavior is fucking stupid.
Jack, we really need to cover how to be a decent global citizen in one of our podcasts, because while it's normal for some people to know how to be a society finch, as I like to call it, to be a community member who contributes, it's also easy to be a selfish asshole who doesn't know how to contribute
of course,
to the community.
But that's why you would have to, again, so it's a multi-step process. Step 1, make America great again, but without Trump. 2, make America awesome. 3, write a manual on how to be awesome. 4, sell people on the idea of following that manual. 5, make them part of your group, right? But 5 comes after 4. First, First, they have to read the manual. Second, they have to apply the manual. And only once they read and apply the manual do they get to be a citizen in your country, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we don't just we don't just make people citizens of your country. We also make their land part of your country, because that's fucking stupid when when we see what's going on here, for instance, in the United States with Mexico, and all the Mexicans and all the South Americans trying to rush into the United States to become American, right? Well, what's wrong with like Salvador? Let's take Salvador as an example. What's wrong with Salvador? Is that a bad place to live? I mean,
Nothing. It's just the government and the people are assholes.
Exactly. It's the government and the people are assholes. So why do we need to take humans who live in a nice place and transport them to a different place in order to give them better government and better police and better
we just need to
governance.
change the culture and the
We just need
objectives of
exactly.
the community.
So instead of importing people, we can export the governance and export the culture. That's what colonialism was. Colonialism was a wholesale, at the point of a gun, exportation of your culture, right?
But it was
Of
far
a
more
British culture.
complex than that, because
so?
there was also exploitation of resources.
Well, yeah. In exchange of you exporting your superior culture, you were
they didn't
demanding.
get anything. The natives people who were being,
You
at
mean
gunpoint.
you mean the Indians didn't get the only
you
railway
say,
system that they still use to this day?
I gotcha. But it was probably all for the English people and not for
Of course.
Indian people at that
That's
point.
the payment.
So they have to be inclusive
Inclusive of who?
of the locals.
Well, that's why I'm arguing for reverse colonialism.
Right.
So again, I'm jokingly was justifying the previous colonialism, but I think the previous colonialism, on the whole, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, was net positive and not net negative. India is a better country because it was part subjugated by Britain, even though British people were complete and utter assholes.
Right.
But remember, even that documentary we watched, that
Empire.
the Empire documentary, it does show how there were different types of British explorers and British colonialists who were trying to do this whole colonization. There were people who actually went to these countries and tried to bring their culture to the people, and also observe their culture. So the ones who would dress like the native people, who would go to India and get themselves an Indian wife and dress like an Indian person and do something like that, but also would bring to India and say, oh, but here's some modern medicine that we brought to you, and here's how to build railroads, and here's how to do the other things. I want to live here. I want to build a life here, but I want you guys to benefit from my knowledge, right? Like, there were those kind of people, and then there were people who were like, I'm going to go to India and I'm going to steal everything that's not nailed down. Right, and unfortunately, there were more of the second type of people than the first, which is usually the case. So this is why I'm arguing for reverse colonialism. Reverse colonialism would try to get the best values of that first group of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The how would you call them? The xenophilic people, the people who are like, I want to learn about all of humanity and I want to share what I know with the humanity, right? Without the assholes who want to come in and steal everything that's not nailed down, right? And you do that through a positive as opposed to a negative action. So instead of going in and saying...
I think the only way that would be possible is through modified capitalism, because the second people always win because of our capitalistic...
Yeah. So again,
tendencies.
you need to make America great again, which means build up capitalism again. In America, capitalism means owning means of production. By the way, let's go back. Let's jump in here for a second. Like, what the fuck does capitalism mean nowadays? Capitalism means owning the means of production, right? How can you call America a capitalist nation if we don't own any fucking means of production?
I thought capitalism was the allocation of scarce resources to...
Yeah, but when you say I'm a capitalist, right?
The highest bidder.
You believe that markets should allocate resources
Yes.
efficiently,
Right.
because people who own the means of production will allocate their resources efficiently to make more money, and they can only make more money by creating more
Effective.
benefit for the society, right?
Okay, yeah.
And the society will compensate them for the benefit that they're creating by paying them money, and then they can invest that in more capital and build up that capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in its essence, if you say I'm a capitalist, that means I own means of production. I own a factory, right? Like people who were called capitalists in the past were people who, not people who are ideologically capitalist, but people who are like, I'm a capitalist, right? What does that mean? Like, what's your job description? I'm a capitalist. What does that mean? You own a factory, right? How can we be a capitalist nation if we don't produce anything? How can we own the means of production if we don't own the means of production? Because we don't produce anything. You can't own the means of production if you don't produce anything, right? What the fuck do you own then? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I own an imaginary factory. It produces imaginary things. I don't need to own it. Like that's not capitalism, right? So first, we'll bring back capitalism by actually getting some shit produced here in the United States. Second, that's how we make America great again. Second, we make America awesome by redistributing that capital. I know, scary word, redistributing. Slightly redistributing it. Not significantly redistributing. Slightly redistributing shit. Such that not as many people stack up at the bottom. So the people all the way at the bottom, right? So if you think about it, what would be an effective system? And wouldn't it be more effective if we had a system where there would be nobody who would be like starving in America? Nobody who's hungry in America. There's nobody who's asked to be homeless in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're a drug addicted asshole who wants to, scream and paint with their feces, the government would still be like, okay, well, you deserve a little household where you can scream and paint with your feces if you want to, while methed out on meth, because that's your personal choice. But we don't want the worst of our in our society to be living like animals, right? Because we have evolved past that. We decided that the worst possible position that you can hold in our society will still have at least these minimum criteria. You'll have medical care, you'll have some amount of food, and you have some sort of shelter, right? Not that big of a fucking ask, right? To basically say the worst of the worst in our society will still live like humans and not like animals.
Mm-hmm.
Not that big of a fucking ask,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we take that, we build a society around that concept. And we build a society around the concept of automation. We don't say, we're not going to do that because that's going to make people lose jobs. We embrace every single automation that we can find. We build a society, we build our innovation, we direct our people towards automation. Automate everything. Automate every fucking thing in the world. Automate jerking off, for fuck's sake. Automate everything, right?
Okay.
Why?
You're
Because
gonna create the eternal city.
no, well, maybe, but that's where it's going, right?
Okay.
That's where it's going to go anyway. Instead of being afraid of it, instead of fighting it, you have to lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a conservative position as much as it's a liberal position, because a liberal will be attracted to that position by trying to build a utopia, like myself, right? But a conservative should be attracted to that position because they should know that if we don't do it, China will,
Mm-hmm.
and if they will, then they win. So
Mm-hmm.
we should do it so we can win.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means it's going to ruin our society at the moment, because our society currently is based upon distributing wealth to people in one particular way, and that particular way is not compatible with automation, then we should build a different society that is compatible with automation. We can't have a society that has no automation in it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we need to build a society that will be competitive and compatible with automation.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can be successful in that regard, then we make America awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we make America awesome, then we say, look, we have figured this shit out. We have figured out how to make our people live longer. We have figured out how to make our people happier. We have figured out how to make our people be more kind and nice to each other. We have cut down on crime. We have legalized all drugs, and as a result, nobody's ODing on poorly produced drugs anymore. We have freedom. We have democracy. And we have ability to lead the world. We have technological superiority, and our people live pretty good lives and don't work very much. And we can export that to your country if you're willing to do the things that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a sell. That's something we could actually do, but that's a big dream, and we forget how to dream big. Our big dreams is like, oh, I hope China buys a little bit more corn from us. That's our big dream, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I hope that in 10 years we can land on Mars. Or like, I hope that in 100 years, the poorest person in the world will still have steady water, electricity, roof over their head, medical treatment, and food.
Or I hope that the Earth, in 100 years, excuse me,
Your microphone is not.
failing.
Yes.
Is it better now?
No, it's worse. You have to plug it in. Okay, that's. I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure if we're recording even anymore. No, no, I think we're still good. Okay.
The global warming issue. Having a dream that in 100 years, global warming situation, like the Earth hasn't rebelled against us and destroyed us all.
Yeah, the global warming thing is also highly misunderstood because something that people just don't understand very well, and that's logarithmic progression. Logarithmic basically look at exponential progression. So I'm sure everybody heard this idea about like compounding interest, and if you can compound like one penny over a period of 100 years, you can get like $1 million, right? You can get a penny compounded into $1 million pretty quickly if you have a high enough interest rate. And interest rate is the rate of growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
An exponential interest rate is just doubling, right? So 100% return on investment in a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at 100% return on investment in a year, you get to like $1 million after like how many doublings? Very few doublings, basically, right? The rate of change for global warming right now is on an exponential progression.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't see it because it's very small. It's always very small at first because if you start from like 0.1, 0.1 times 0.1, it's
very small.
It's a very small progression. Like when you start doubling, it's just like with COVID cases. We see it with COVID cases where it starts growing, and people say, "Oh boy, in about 2 weeks you're going to see a huge spike," and then everybody laughs and says, "Oh, that's bullshit." Blah blah blah. How do you know? And then it spikes, and it's like, "Well, how did you know that?"
It's because humans don't understand nonlinear growth.
Yeah, it's nonlinear growth. It's exponential progression, and that's happening right now with pretty much everything. The thing that we are in terms of global warming, the thing that we can be hopeful about though, is that our technology is also exponentially progressing. So that means we can invent our way. You saw what happened with these vaccines, right? Where everybody said that the fastest we've ever gotten the vaccine was like 3-4 years, and now we have 3 vaccine candidates
within a year.
Within less than a year, within 8 months.
Yeah,
no, not even 8 months, within 6 months, because they didn't even start working on it until they got all the data shared from China. So they started working on it in early March. They started working on it on the vaccine. All these companies, right? So between March and now, so March is 2 months in there, 2 months in there. So yeah, that's 12 minus 4 is 8 months. Yeah, in 8 months. So you were right.
You're right.
Well, we were right. In 8 months, they got the vaccines, and that they haven't gotten through all the regulatory filings and stuff like that. But the development happened, right?
Yeah.
And we can do the same thing with global warming. We can do the same thing with our challenges in the future.
But only if we take them seriously.
If we take them seriously, and if we devote resources to them, and if we make it a challenge.
And we won't take them seriously unless some big catastrophic thing happens to us, which will make us say, "Hey, wait a second."
Unfortunately, that's where we are right now, because certain people politicized a topic that technically should, generally speaking, appeal to both true conservatives and liberals, right?
Yeah.
So the right and the left should be united on this particular issue. We used to be united on way more issues back in the day. Somebody posted this on Hacker News a couple of years ago, where this dude took votes from the Senate and because Senate is a little bit more manageable. So he took votes from the Senate, where there's 100 senators, right? And he organized the data by putting it in one column, putting whether or not it was a bill introduced by a Democrat or a Republican or bipartisan, like by both sides. And then he put in how many people voted. Then he voted on. Then he organized them by how many people from one side voted on that bill and how many people on the other side voted for it in favor of that bill, right? And in the 80s, it's like a mishmash. Some people voting for this, some people voting for that. Like you couldn't, like basically in the 80s, if somebody asked you, here's the bill, it's introduced by a Democrat or it's introduced by a Republican, predict to me how they would vote on it, right? You'll be like, how would I know? I would have to talk to all of them, or we have to have a vote. They have independent thinking; they can vote for themselves because the voting was like mishmash, right?
Yeah, I remember. I think it was Stephen Colbert in the early teens. I think was interviewing an old timey senator who was saying that back in the day they used to have like across the aisle conversations.
It's not even across the aisle. They would actually agree on a bunch of things, right?
Yeah.
And you can see this so visually, graphically. You have all these dots, and they all mush together because they all agreeing on a bunch of things, and there was some things that they had disagreements on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, and you can see it in that website. I'm going to find that website, and we're going to link it if I find it. You can progress it to like 2000s, and then right around 95, 96, you see the separation started happening quite aggressively, where like there was more and more dots go to one side and more dots go to the other side, which is really what's happening is more and more like the Republican senators were pulled to one side and the Democratic senators were pulled to the other side.
Is that because lobbying got really strong?
I don't
like corporate
know.
lobbying got really strong.
I don't know.
I wonder what happened in the 90s.
I've been trying to understand this
that
myself.
made
I'm going to find that
division
website.
more clear.
In fact, let's kill this here. We didn't accomplish anything today. I was really wanting to talk to you about my election system, but I think that's not going to happen. So we're just going to do another podcast later on. And I'm going to try to find that website. If I do, we will link it and we can play around with it a little bit more and we can talk about it. Anyways, enjoy
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, enjoy Thanksgiving, and maybe next time we can also not talk about politics and talk about how we learned how to develop in C for embedded programming recently. And we recently did a really cool project, and I can now I have finally built something from scratch out of chips that actually is going to go into a real world and it's going to run. I can't say where and when because it's all NDA and shit like that, but we're firmware developers now officially. So if you need a firmware to develop, drop us a line. And that's that.
That's exciting.
I don't know why I brought it up, but it's exciting. And we always talk about politics, and I think we should talk about other cool shit that we do, like, products that we build and stuff like that. We can't, again, talk about specifics of the products and what the names are and shit, but we can talk about, like, the cool technologies that we used and stuff.
Yeah. You had such a great idea for the for the replacement of the Honda system that they use in Japan. The stamp system.
Well, they're digital. They need to go to digital cryptographic systems.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Anyways, we'll talk about it next podcast.
Okay.
Let's do that. Let's do more techie stuff.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.